Welcome to the Slade Ham Experiment. Hi, hello, how are you? I raise a glass, a toast, a cheers. 'Tis coffee I have in the captain's seat this week. Welcome aboard the Midnight Spaceship, each and every one of you. It's a Q&A episode. All of the questions from your minds. Let's see what I have to say. Some of these I've thought about, some of these I haven't. I guess the first one I should answer based on the cup I'm drinking from. Are you quitting the Whiskey Brothers to be an outlaw comic? No, I am not. Some of you may have seen, I haven't been very public about the show because we just announced it. I'm joining up with the outlaw comics. And if you're not familiar with the history, way back in the day, there was a group of comics called the Outlaw Comics, and they were here in Texas, and the guys like Andy Huggins and Jimmy Pineapple, and Kinnison was part of that mix, but Bill Hicks certainly. Jimmy Pineapple has put together a modern version. Andy Huggins is back on the bill, but also just a bunch of us who are good friends and headliners. Juan Villarreal, Billy D. Washington, T-Shawn Shannon, who wrote the Bear sketch from SNL. It's a good group of comics. Who else is on there? Bob Biggerstaff. Am I forgetting someone else? J.R. Brow just joined. It's just a murderer's row of comics. We have one show in Houston coming up in October, but the reason I haven't mentioned it is because I have a show in Houston in August, and it just seems unfair to promote that, where I'm splitting the money amongst everybody else before I promote the show that I'm keeping all for myself. So with that out of the way, that question answered, buckle up, sit back, relax. I'm coming back with your questions on the Slade Ham Experiment. I do these Q&A episodes somewhat frequently, so if you would like to join one, maybe put your own question in the hat to be grabbed, you can do it. You can leave it in the comments below. You can email me at the sladehamexperiment@gmail. You can also do it on Facebook or Instagram or any of those other nonsensical ways of communicating with other human beings. But your question will go into the hopper. We'll start with a good one. This question is, let's see, how do I want to answer this? Is there a place that you've traveled to that you are eager to return to again but haven't had the chance to do it? It would have been Japan up until last March, and it may still be. I reserve the right to still say Japan. Many of the places I've been, I kind of travel through fleetingly, right? I'm there for a day. I'm there for 2 days. I think I spent 36 hours or something total in Bulgaria. And sometimes those aren't enough to entice me, right? They don't put the hook in my mouth. Okay, this is cool, but it's a similar kind of cool. Japan, I spent 2 weeks there this past spring, whatever. And it was the first time, I think it was the 6th time I've been, but the first time I've been like as a true traveler, without shows at night, without stuff to do, without a real itinerary, free to explore. And I thought I was in love with that country before then. But I'm madly in love now. So I think that's my answer. If there's a place I was going to return to that I'd been at all, it would be Japan. And it feels like I'm cheating because I've seen more of it than I've seen most countries. But the truth is, I haven't even scratched the surface there. So me and Japan, lots more to do. All right, 2 cookies. Mary, you've been so kind. I've been drinking the tea. This is coffee. It doesn't count. You get 2 questions, but they're good questions. Your favorite homemade cookie versus your favorite store-bought cookie. Well, store-bought is Chips Ahoy. I'm an old school punk, man. I don't even know what they are. They're not really chocolate. They're not really chip. They're barely cookie, but they go down so easy. You just like they look like Cookie Monster cookies. And I think that's why I like them, and they crumble the way I eat them. Definitely Chips Ahoy. But homemade, I always want to say chocolate chip, but I always end up happier with homemade sugar cookies. If I can do any one at all, and I'm weirdly not eating a bunch of stuff right now, so it's making me sad to even have to contemplate what homemade cookie I would eat if I could eat one. But Homemade sugar cookies, and you can't just make some punk-ass sugar cookies. You got to make them big. They got to get the right golden brown crust, but still be soft on the inside. And the trick is they got to have that big crystally raw sugar. You got to have that all over the top because it's got a little crunch, like you're crunching sparkles when you're eating this happy cookie. Yes, sugar cookies all the way. Here's a real question. Oh, because I am in the process of writing 2 books right now. Mary asks, if you could pick Neil Gaiman's mind about fiction writing, what would you ask him to help you with your fiction book idea? So I would have asked him when I went and saw him speak a year or so ago in New York in the fall, and it was lovely. And he talked about character, and he talked about how sometimes characters I forget how he phrased it, but begin to write themselves. How sometimes they surprise you and they do things that you weren't expecting. And it perplexed me. I was like, what are you talking about? How does something you're writing write itself? Because I've always written nonfiction. I've written memoir-esque essays about certain things, but never from a place of creating real characters. But as I have explored this the last, couple of months, half a year, however long it's been, I've discovered exactly what he's talking about. Let me tell you why. It's things emerge from other things creatively, okay? If I know this within stand-up, that if I take a thing I'm thinking about and I take another thing I'm thinking about, eventually I'm going to think about those 2 things in concert. They combine in my brain on a walk, on a bike ride, when I'm almost asleep, and then I have to get up and open my phone and punch it in so I don't wake up in the morning and go, what was that thing that was so brilliant? And then I write it down and I don't have it. My brain's doing this constantly, and I know this with stand-up. So it shouldn't have come as a shock to me that when you're writing fiction, the same thing occurs. You have to have, though, different elements. So I didn't understand. When you think about writing, right, I've always written. I've been a writer for a long time. I've written all these different things, but I've never written structured fiction. And even in the stories that I've written, I've never thought about them in the components that I'm now thinking about fiction, right? That all story is some combination of character, plot, and setting. And that if you can create those elements properly, if you can world build properly, it doesn't have to be fantasy. It can be you world build even if you're writing a crime novel set in downtown Houston in 2024. You still have to build that world. So between the setting that you build and the story that you decide is going to happen there and the people that you decide it's going to happen to, from those components, things happen. What you thought a character might do turns out to not be the thing they would do many, many, many thousands of words into writing that character. And that is what I learned, I think, that he meant, because I've heard other authors now say it. I've read, I can't even tell you the amount of books I've absorbed or lectures in the last however long. It's fascinating to me because I start to see the commonalities, and that's one of them. Many, many authors will tell you that their characters often surprise them. And it's been very neat to come up with the answer to that and realize that while he was telling me the answer to a question that I had about character indirectly through his lecture, I also didn't understand the answer until just now. So my question to him would have been more clarification for my own edification, but all I really needed to do was learn some more shit. My other question to him would be, how can you be a pantser, which is the difference between plotters and pantsers. There are plotters who write down every step in an outline form and know exactly what's going to happen in a book, and what they call pantsers, who are people who, I know basically where the story is going to go, and I'll just write it. Those people can go to hell. I don't know how he does it. All right. More questions. More questions. Here's a fun one. What's the most fucked up you've been on stage? Haha. I can give you 3 answers. And I think the answer is Beaumont, Texas, 2007, right before my comedy club closed. Maybe my birthday show that year. I did 20-something shots on stage. There was a stretch in the late 2000s where I just was doing marathon shows and stunt drinking. And you couldn't send enough shots to the stage. You couldn't do it. If you sent them, I would drink it as long as it was whiskey. Sometimes if it wasn't. That Beaumont show, they finally just brought the bottle on stage and I was pouring my own shots about every 7 minutes or so. 90 minutes, 20-something shots. Sam Damaris told me I drunkenly put some dude in an arm bar on the patio of my own comedy. I can't even imagine the lawsuit that should have been. The other 2 occasions, both Whiskey Brothers related. One, when I first moved to Houston, the old Laugh Stop. We did me, Sam, and Rob Mungle did a 3-man Whiskey Brothers show. And I was smack in the middle of this. No wonder we didn't go anywhere sometimes. Where, again, I'm going last. The crowd is rocking. We're in the old Laugh Stop. This is like the one with the soul before it moved to that upstairs. This is the one where all the albums are recorded, where all of the history happened. The Laugh Stop. Whiskey Brothers have it for a night. It's a monster crowd. We're killing. I'm last. I keep going. They keep sending shots. I was dragged out of there. Like they had to come up on stage and get me. I was still talking. I'll never break stride. I'll just another shot. I don't sound like I'm slurring in my head. And the audience stays. I don't know what's actually happening. I think they're just waiting to like, is this guy going to die on stage in front of us? The sloppiest night was in Jennings, Louisiana. Whiskey Brothers. Me, Sam, and Rob again. Man, that was a good era. And we did. I'll find the photo. I'll have to find it. I don't know if I'll have it in time to put it up this episode. But the 3 of us did. You can count the glasses on the bar stool and the table and the floor. There were 56 shots and or drinks between the 3 of us in a 90-minute show. It's if you held a contest and just say, can y'all drink these drinks? You don't have to do anything else. Can you just drink can you 3 people drink all these drinks in 90 minutes? Most 3-man teams will go, nuh-uh. And we did it and did comedy and got paid and I was lucky enough to go middle of that show, so I didn't get the brunt of it. Rob Mungle did. They sent him a shot. I remember they brought it up to the stage, and they had it covered, and then they lit something on fire. There was suction. He had to put a straw. It was like this whole contraption. And the next morning, I won't get into the details of my night, Sam, I had dragged drunkenly out to my car. He stumbled out of it, got muddy in the ditch. He had all of our pay from the show in his back pocket. So bills, not many. We were, young, but they were scattered all across the street. I found him passed out in the ditch. I also have that photo. I got him back to the hotel. Mungle the next morning, I remember honking the horn. He came out like 11. We're all hungover, just bleary-eyed. And he comes running out, and he goes, we got to go now. I was like, what? He goes, I put a 20 on the dresser, but I puked everywhere. There was another night. I got a picture of this tray, too, in Vicenza, Italy. Sam and I were there. Who else was with me? Brendan McKeegan from Canada, maybe? Who else was on that tour? Anyway, Vicenza, Italy. And these, why do I keep saying Italy? Vicenza, Italy. That's just hard. It's the A to the I. Vicenza, Italy. So easily distracted. They brought 2 trays of Jameson, like ringed, 3 concentric rings of shots on each tray. And they were like, we heard y'all liked whiskey. My liver quivers. Okay, here we go. More questions. I'm rambling. Kevin asks, what was life like with your brother? Because you're both so awesome. Oh, which brother do you know, Kevin? The fishing brother? The brother that was in the Wu-Tang Clan? The entrepreneur brother? I think you know my fishing brother. He has a fishing channel on YouTube. He's a father and a super cool kid. He was my little brother growing up, my youngest brother. So you got to remember, it's like an 8-year difference between us, maybe 9. So most of my childhood, he was not a person. It wasn't until I was like 8 or 9 that I had a little baby brother. And then all he did was cry for like a year or two. So I was like 10 before I had a real brother. And then it took him a while to grow up, right? So we abused him. And that's the problem with the age difference. He took the brunt of it for many, many, many years until he got bigger than me. And then I took the brunt of it, however many years it's been since then to now. He got in amazing shape. He was just full-blown bodybuilding. Every muscle rocks. You're like, man, that's my little. I got the same genetics. How come? Do I need more push-ups? What do I need to do? I went and worked out with him one day. I was stupid enough to ride my motorcycle there, and then I left, and my arms didn't work, and I had them floppy on the motorcycle trying to drive, but like I didn't have any motor function, so like you almost have to walk your bike home. He was a blast, though, because there was a certain age where we were all sort of outdoors all the time, and age gap or not, even when he was 5 or 6 and I was 13 or 14, at that point we're all kind of playing different games, but the brothers fill the gap because there's 2 in between us, so there's a whole continuum, so it makes it fun to hang out. And my childhood was absolutely, every memory of it is filed away blissfully. I know it wasn't a blissful childhood. I know a lot of it sucked. I'm the product of divorce and parents who fought and terrible schooling and no motivation and all sorts of things it was a train wreck, right? I used to get in fights. I was a bad student. Like, none of it would go in the good column, except I put all the memories in the good column, and so many of them are brother related. I just, that's it. I adore my siblings. So if it wasn't him you were talking about, the other brothers are great too. They're married. They got kids. Lives are great. Brandon's no longer in the Wu-Tang Clan and doesn't rap. But past that, everything's fantastic. What else? What would I... Okay, multiple people asked this question, so I should answer it. I've probably answered it on the podcast before. What would you do if you didn't do comedy, or if comedy had not captured your attention? I've always said this. I've said that I would have drawn comic books, that I would have tried to become a penciler for a comic book company. But I think that's just me telling you what I would have wanted to do. What would I have done would have been different. Comedy, in many ways, has saved me completely. It's taught me everything I really know about anything. It's been the skeleton on which I've added things, but without it, I don't know that I ever would have learned any of the tools or the skills or the things I know now, nor do I know that I would have been driven to learn them, right? Even if the information was still out there and accessible to me, would I have gone and got it? No, because I've only really done it in the name of comedy. So the truth is, I probably would still be bartending somewhere. I would have been either a career bartender, which means I'd have been on like DWI number 9 or something in a small town like that. I'd certainly have probably accidentally had a kid or two, which would have derailed everything. Radio had a fair chance, but it was a wrong place. Beaumont wasn't the place to try to do that. And I don't know that anything else would have gotten me out of town. Because maybe somebody with a great idea would have sniped me and been able to like talk, hey, you should come do this thing with me. And I'd be, oh, that's a great idea. And they'd go, oh, yeah, let me explain it to you. And I go, yeah, I'm too scared to do anything on my own. Let me help you with that. That's most likely what would have occurred. What else? What's the dumbest thing you've seen this year in person? Ooh, so many. But I'm going to go with a shawarma shop that had its Instagram follower count updating live on the counter where everybody could see it. 4,280 is what it said. And I was puzzled by that. Why should this shop have, why would they take the time and the energy and the effort to put this thing up and say, this is important, right? Our followers, no, your shawarma matters, you knucklehead, not your followers. Followers don't indicate whether or not you got good shawarma. It indicates whether or not you're Instagrammable. And I guess you are Instagrammable now that you have your Instagram followers posted live and some weird meta kind of sign thing happening next to the... But what was most sad about it was not the fact that they had it posted. That it was the fact that they posted 4,280 followers. Like that's anything at all. And what's sadder than that is that's the same amount of followers I got right now. So, hey... What are you doing, shawarma shop? All right. Got time for one more? Two more? Let's do two more. Paige asks, what is something... There's a lot of female questions. There's a few dudes. My demographic says I'm much heavier male than female, but the interaction is much heavier female than male. Dudes, step up your game. I like talking to y'all. Paige asks, what is something you would take back in your comedy career? Oh, all right. Let me get this knife out of my gut. There are probably several. Paige, what would I take back? One, I would have applied to more festivals sooner. Something I've always avoided. I am drastically bad at networking and should have pursued many elements of that much sooner in my career, just for the sake of contacts. It's vital. Because many times when I found myself with something of value, I didn't have any way to do anything with it because I didn't have these kinds of contacts. I should have explored that. Two, I am now focusing less on group efforts. And not to become suddenly selfish, not to be like, I'm wasting my time. But it's kind of like my comment about the Outlaws earlier. At some point, when you reap the field, when you pull in the bounty, you get your percentage of it. And I keep and have always worked on group projects in the hope that a collaboration, a combination of efforts would be greater than the individual parts. Oftentimes it has been, but it's like putting together a team for a heist. You need certain people, right? You can't have 4 safecrackers or you're never going to get past the guard or shut off the cameras. And I've always built teams. Well, safecrackers are fun to hang out with. Just get in here, safecrackers. And you can see that doesn't always work. So I would have, if I had the choice, focused maybe not so much less time on the group efforts, but certainly more time on individual skills and craft and the things that I could control to help alter my own direction going forward. And I think that a ton of that, if I'm being perfectly honest, is the reason that I do that too, is the fear of what happens if you do something on your own. There's a bit of a group, like it's why bands, I think, have it so much easier than comics. You can blame the drummer. It's very easy to, if a show goes sideways, the bass player was off, and then it's not your fault. It's y'all's fault. With comedy, you sort of live and die on your own. You're the one on the stage. You're the one with the mic in your hand. You're the one with the light in your eye. You're the one who came up with all the words. You're the one delivering it. And If it doesn't go right, it is all you. Group efforts, as you try to do things like that, doesn't carry the same risk. And I think a lot of it, why does my nose itch? A lot of it that's frustrating to me now makes me want to change some of how I developed. Some of it comes from the fact that I know I'm self-taught. Almost everything I do is self-taught. Trial and error, stuff I'm interested in. I get in, I muck with it, I put my hands in it, I play with it. I don't know what anything does. And I'm not an instruction book kind of guy. So I just sort of do it and do what feels right. And I've never had when you do that, you don't have a measuring stick to lay it up against. So what I also would have done differently is pursue more mentors, certainly sooner. I was very lucky with a short stretch with Christopher Titus, but Ralphie May was probably the biggest mentor I had, and it was all too brief of a period, and he died too young before he could teach me so many things. And I think I figured a lot of them out now, maybe even some that he didn't know, but there's still so much I could have garnered from that guy and gleaned from. There's many people that I could learn from that I just don't have access to, which brings you back to the whole networking thing and everything else. So in a nutshell, that's it. I would network more. I would focus more on myself, and I would do it all with a little bit of intent and a sincere approach at trying to get a mentor to actually guide me and give me some insight, so I didn't have to do it all the long, hard way. Because sometimes I'm like the quadriplegic who climbs the mountain, and I'm like, "Yay, I did it!" And they're like, "Yeah, but there's, there was an escalator or a gondola," and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know. I was just hoofing myself around the mountain with no arms and no legs." I'm bad with analogies and metaphors sometimes, so you can take these or leave them with a grain of salt. I'm not going to edit it out. I don't have time. Last question. Where are we at? Oh, perfect timing. From my good friend Paul Odo. Hi, Paul. How are you? Fantastic artist, Paul. You should look him up. What scares you about AI? It's a good question right now, because Paul and I talk about stuff like this all the time. There's a good episode or two you can go back and listen to us banter. Let me tell you first what excites me about it. What I've gleaned from it. Why would I say gleaned twice in one episode? It must be because it's in my head, because I just said it. You ever notice that? You ever hear a word, it just sticks in your subconscious? I have friends who do this all the time. They absorb one new word, and then that's the word they use every 10 sentences for the next week or two. That's me with Glean this episode. AI, and I subscribe to the paid version of Chat right now. I'm considering switching over to Claude. But for now, Chat. It's an excellent brainstorming companion. It's also excellent at taking my jumbles of scrappily written notes, scratchedly, my chicken scratch. My writing is just a jumble as I'm getting it out of my head. And to be able to stick it into something like that and go, organize this, and have it find some sort of meaning in it all and put it in some sort of order is pretty cool. At least for organizing random notes and things that I just have 10,000 words and I don't know what any of it is. It's also very good. I took a story I wrote that I was working on, and I've been doing so much work on this new book, the nonfiction book. And I'm going to be doing some beta readers, by the way. Some of you have already expressed interest. If you want to be one, there's a process, and I'll get to it on another episode. But I took a chapter that I was working on, and it was written in present tense. And in the past, I know this because the first book I wrote was written in the past tense, and I changed it to present tense. And I did it word by word for 60-something thousand words, almost 70. I took this chapter, I stuck it in a chat. I said, change the tense, and just told it what POV I wanted, and it shifted all of the verb tenses like that. Now, I still had to go in and make sure, because there's some things I didn't want every verb tense shifted, right? Sometimes I am talking in present tense, so I had to go manually error correct, but it 4,000 words, spit it right back out to me. That's the benefit. I can also take something like a lecture or a podcast, and I can have it broken down. I can feed the transcript in, and I can get back notes or an outline or a cheat sheet. It's cool like that. But that's what excites me. What scares me is what I'm watching happen. It's under the umbrella of the same thing I bitch about every week. But there is a cheapening of the artistic process. With visuals, there's a certain look to an AI visual right now. If you ask it to create a piece of art, there's a certain swirly, airbrushy, liquid, anamorphic sort of feel to the images it creates. And it's just good enough is the problem. If you're making a flyer, if you're making a poster, if you're doing something that isn't going to live forever, it does a good enough job. It just looks like everything else. The problem is that it's skipping the artistic process. And I am afraid as we go forth, people in their attempt to get their social media numbers up and the attempt to feed all the content they can, they're going to look for shortcuts in creating that content because that's the only way to get enough content out there. And in those shortcuts, you're going to go to AI, and AI is going to step in and is going to do all of the hard work of artistic creation. And when you do that, you miss the whole point. Because the point of artistic creation is not the end result. It's why artists often sell their work. The money is more valuable to them than the painting they finished because the value of the painting came in the painting of the painting. And with artificially created art, photos, paintings, songs in some instances, writing, it's starting to happen. My Kindle is full. If I found it right now, it's right here. There is, for sure, on the cover, of course it is, an AI-generated ad. There's always one sitting there. The Lost City Adventure, an epic underwater adventure with Max and Mia, and an AI-generated cover, and guaranteed, if you went to buy it, AI-generated stories. And if that's the world we're headed into, we're going to find that it has very little value because it's all disposable. And the problem that arises when stuff is disposable is you don't get any value out of it for yourself. There was a study done. I don't know where it's at. Do I have this pulled up? I want to get the guy's name right. Dan Ariely. And he is let me get credit. He's a psychologist and behavior economist. And he spoke of a study they did where they took these toys, Bionicles. And if you know what they are, they're like Lego people. You kind of plug them all. They're like Legos. You put them together. Takes a little bit of time. They brought people in. They said, hey, we're going to give you $3 to put this toy together. And they go, okay. They put it together. And they go, now, would you put another one together for $2.90? And they go, all right. And then a third, would you do it for $2.80? They keep decreasing the amount to see how low the person how low of an amount they'll take to put together this toy. What's most interesting is they did the study again, and they, instead of just asking the person how much they'd do it for, as they asked them the question and they started to do the next one for $2.90, they dismantled the first one in front of them, the work that the person had just done. They took it apart. They put it back in the box while the person was working on the second one. And what they found was that these people bailed on this dumb experiment way faster than the ones who just thought their thing was going in a box or somewhere else. No one wants to see their work destroyed. We don't care about the end result, but we do need to believe it has value. Why? Because there's a cost involved with the creation. And all art should have that cost. And the cost is the amount of time it took you, the amount of hours you put into learning the skill, the meticulousness with which you crafted the art, the care, the time you put in that you didn't have to. All of that cost is what makes the end product have value to the artist. And if that doesn't exist, it really doesn't matter where it goes or what it does. If the artist doesn't feel there's value in what they created, then it's pointless and they won't continue to do it. And that is my fear when it comes to AI, that it's going to take the part of the process out that is ultimately the part we need, because the cost is the value. And I think AI is taking the cost of doing everything away. It's making everybody able to try it all with no repercussions, with no consequences, with no fear of actual failure. And that fear of failure is what drives us as artists. It pushes me constantly. I'm not going to go out like that. I'm not some punk-ass little bitch who's going to get beat by some industry that's dumber than me. That's what drives me. Not all that drives me. It's probably not even a percentage of what drives me, but it's in there. And AI takes some of that away. It condenses the process into a pill you can take. And once it's all bite-sized and simple, we're all suddenly on equal footing. Well, I argue that we're not. And I will happily sit here and chisel my way through the stuff. I'll use AI for the disposable things, but not for the stuff that matters. That answer the questions? Is that all the questions? Is that it? It's not the existential stuff. I don't think it's going to end the world. I think it's just going to end art, Paul. Thank you guys for hanging out. Put your question. I'm always taking questions. We'll compile them, and I will get to them in another episode. Thank you, as always. From the Midnight Spaceship, I raise a glass of my Outlaw Comics friends. To you guys, cheers. See you on another episode soon.